Hello and welcome to the 2015 GFSI Leadership Series brought to you by SafetyChain Software and Food Safety Tech. My name is Patty Murray with Food Safety Tech, and we're excited for the third and final event in this series, FSSC 22000 in the Age of FSMA, with special guest speaker Dr. Jacqueline Southey, U.S. Liaison for FSSC 22000. Food Safety Tech is very proud to be the media sponsor of this important series, for which we have more than 2,300 registrants. We have a lot of very valuable information coming your way today, so we're going to get right to it. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to your moderator for today's webinar, Barbara Levin, Senior Vice President and co-founder of SafetyChain Software. Barbara?
Thank you so much, Patty, and welcome everyone. We're very excited about the wrap-up of our series and our exciting event today with FSSC. Before we begin and I introduce our guest speaker, let me give you a couple of housekeeping announcements. We are being hosted on our event today by WebEx. Should you have any technical issues and you're still online, you can send a question to the host. If you're unable to get online or having trouble staying online, you can call WebEx technical support directly at 877-509-3239. Again, that's 877-509-3239. By close of business on Tuesday, everybody will receive a link to the recording of today's event. For your privacy, you can see your name and the names of the hosts and panelists, but not the names of the other attendees today. And when we're finished our interview with Dr. Southey, we will take questions from the audience, and we'll tell you how to submit questions online when we get to that portion of our event today. We also want to take a special opportunity to thank Food Safety Tech, who's been the media sponsor on this event. As Patty said, more than 2,000 registrants. Obviously, GFSI in the Age of FSMA is very important and relevant topic to everybody, so we'd like to thank everybody for their participation, and special thanks to Food Safety Tech. We've got a great agenda planned for you today. We're going to start out with a look at how FSSC 22000 certification can prepare a company for FSMA compliance. We're going to look at that in general, as well as with some specific areas, including supplier controls, building a food safety plan, audit readiness, and food safety culture. We'll then look at scheme changes that are being made or planned with FSSC to better align with FSMA, gaps in FSMA that are filled by FSSC 22000, what you should be doing now to prepare for FSMA compliance on day one. We'll then take your questions, and then we invite everybody to stay on after the event for an optional high-level demonstration of SafetyChain for GFSI and FSMA to see how automation can help you manage a robust GFSI program and be FSMA ready. With that, I'm very excited to introduce our special guest, Dr. Jacqueline Southey. She is the U.S. Liaison for FSSC 22000. Jacqueline was a guest with us on our first GFSI series last year. Jacqueline, welcome back. We're so excited to have you. And we're going to jump into our first question. I know that we're going to look at FSSC 22000 alignment with some very specific areas of FSMA, but I thought we'd start out with kind of just in general, how do FSMA and FSSC 22000 align when it comes to compliance? So welcome, and I've already thrown that first question out at you.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and first of all, I'd like to sort of echo your thanks to Food Safety Tech and my thanks to SafetyChain for hosting this series. And I really think that the interest in the series is really tantamount to the commitment that the food industry does have to food safety. And I'd like to thank you for doing this and to focus on GFSI. So, we know that the industry has been working with GFSI for a number of years, and it's a big interest to everybody after all the efforts and work that they have put in to become GFSI compliant, to then see how their own efforts have sort of lined up with FSMA. And I think it's interesting that of all the issues that the food safety the food industry is facing, but, a major topic of conversation today is, if I am GFSI certified, am I FSMA compliant? So, and I think, as has been echoed by your guests, in previous weeks, you are a long way there. You're 80% towards becoming compliant. Some companies will be more compliant in some areas than in others. Now, with regard to FSSC 22000, your alignment is going to be very good. To start, we are a GFSI benchmark certification scheme, and as has been evidenced by speakers from SQF and BRC, just by being GFSI certified, you have shown your commitment to food safety, so you have a number of the major issues in producing safe food in place. FSMA just takes it a little bit deeper and tweaks it as it should do as a regulatory system. But as far as alignment with FSSC 22000 is concerned, it's very closely aligned. And that alignment comes from the framework of the ISO 22000 management system. And the management system requires you to have a food safety plan. And the shared goals of FSSC through its ISO framework and FSMA is obviously to produce safe food with having a food safety plan, by incorporating the preventative measures, and by ensuring continuous improvement. And this is what the goals of the FDA, as we all know, is. They wanted to move from being a reactive situation to being a preventive situation. And there has been a lot of go-between industry, the experience of the manufacturers, of the certification system that exists already. And I think that we have, FSMA has arrived at what's going to be an effective food safety measure. So how does FSSC align? As I said, the essential elements of FSSC 22000 is its ISO 22000 framework. And ISO 22000 is the backbone of the food safety management system. It requires a company to have a food safety plan, as is referred to in FSMA. And ISO 22000 provides that flexible but robust framework that is applicable throughout the supply chain. Within FSSC 22000, the scheme also requires attention to the prerequisite programs. For those of you that are familiar with FSSC 22000, it's comprised of the ISO 22000 framework, the prerequisite programs, which are the preventative control, if you like, that FSMA refers to, that are scope specific, and it's also the governance of the FSSC 22000 requirements, which we'll come back to later. But this food safety plan and this food safety management system that's inherent in the ISO 22000 approach lines up with the requirements of FSMA and its requirements for the food safety plan. The preventative controls line up very well with the prerequisite programs which are required within FSSC 22000. And the supply chain, the focus on the supply chain, both domestically and foreign suppliers, is brought into focus with FSMA, and that's an inherent part also of the ISO 22000 approach. This supply chain visibility, which comes from the ISO 22000 framework and requirements, that you have to have visibility both of your suppliers, both downstream and upstream. So all of that really brings anyone that is FSSC 22000 certified very sharply aligned with FSMA. So
thank you. Thank you. Now you just mentioned supply chain visibility, so maybe we can move now to our next question, which is how does FSSC 22000 help prepare for FSMA in terms of alignment with supplier controls? We know that this is a strong area in FSSC 22000.
Yeah, part of ISO 22000, as I said, its strength is that it's applicable to all aspects of the supply chain from feed producers into primary food producers, the manufacturers, secondary food producers and the wholesalers. So it's applicable all the way through, and it's specialized by the prerequisite program. And inherent to the food safety management system is this requirement for interactive communication. And that means that you're communicating up the food chain to make sure that your product that you're producing is actually ending up in the right place. It's not being used for the wrong purposes or for the wrong in the wrong situation if you're a raw material supplier. And it also requires communication downstream to make sure that all your raw materials, all your supplies all meet requirements of the ISO 22000 framework. So there's communication with customers and suppliers to identify the hazards, to verify the control measures, clarifying, the use, make sure that it's, come from the right place, that it's traceable, that what you have is what they say it has. It has to be documented, of course, as well. Within the ISO 22000, there's this requirement for documentation and verification, which brings us, again, in line with the FSMA requirements. And the verification is all inherent in that communication. So it's always been, a major feature of ISO 22000. And it's good to see that this has been brought into FSMA because, obviously, your risks and your hazards aren't just within your own manufacturer. They are what's gone before and what's going to go once it leaves your possession. So it's a very important part of FSSC 22000. And also, as has been mentioned before, FSMA really controls the hazard of food within the U.S. It's a U.S.-centric regulation. The GFSI certification systems are all global, and we've been working with global food safety. It's a global food safety initiative. So all of the schemes are sort of applicable to companies sort of all over the globe. And so really, the definition of a foreign and a domestic supplier really is all the same. So whether we're looking at a supply chain, it doesn't really matter, whether it's the U.S. or whether it's overseas. They're all certified to the same standard. And so this supply chain visibility should, have extensive reach out to the foreign suppliers importing into the U.S.
It's a really good point, very insightful. There's been a lot of talk about FSMA food safety plans and the whole migration from ASSIP to HARP-C. So how does FSSC 22000 prepare for FSMA in terms of building that FSMA-ready food safety plan?
Well, actually, if you're FSSC certified, then you should already be, you will already be doing this. So the HARP-C FSMA really refers to, or can be referred to, sort of the HACCP with the preventative controls. So the HARP-C takes your preventative measures outside your hazard analysis just of your, of a small confined product or process. And it really ensures that you look at your external environment and any issues which are likely to cause contamination or reduction in safety of your product. So the preventive controls and the operational preventative prerequisite programs of the ISO 22000 framework are all encompassed within this HARP-C approach. So they're all a means of not only the hazard assessment and your hazard control, but also your risk and your control outside of that actual process, whether it's rotation, whether it's training of your staff, whether it's external factors, introduction of contamination from an external outside of a zone, is all controlled by these prerequisite programs. So the FSSC 22000 is the prerequisite programs that have been introduced by sort of ISO 22000 all bring it into line with HARP-C. So really, we're going to be in a very good place with dealing with the preventive controls and the risk-based preventive controls that align with that FSSC 22000 approach. So, just moving down the slide then, we have a lot on this slide. The combination of HACCP and the PRPs that I mentioned in the ISO 22000 should provide you with this flexible but robust approach that we always talk about. And we're very encouraged to see that sort of the FDA has taken on this approach, that you have this framework that gives you the flexibility to be applicable to all situations. That different manufacturers have different issues. If you're producing ice cream, you have a completely different issue than if you're producing baked goods. And your prerequisite programs have to apply to that specific situation. So rather than being prescriptive and saying, you have to clean this at certain intervals, or you have to monitor this at different intervals, the prerequisite programs apply to that particular situation. And within the ISO 22000 framework, very similar to the FSMA framework, they have to be verified, they have to be monitored, and they have to be documented. So the validation, verification, monitoring, and documentation that everybody's looking at within HACCP and the preventive controls is an inherent part of the ISO 22000 and FSSC, the ISO 22000 approach and the FSSC 22000 certification. So all this framework that already exists, that industry has been working with and integrating with their own systems, is going to be a very effective tool to get companies ready for FSMA. And I've used that term, effective tool, because we're not going to put ourselves up as a regulatory system. The FDA has that domain. They are the regulators. They are the ones that make the decisions, and they're the ones that carry the responsibility of the meeting those regulations. We work with everybody, with our companies, with our certification bodies, and with the regulators to do the best job that we can. So I think that all these certification systems should be seen as tools. They're all combined experience to make them better. And it's an effective tool, I think, to get the companies ready to meet these regulations.
Excellent, thank you. Audit readiness is another hot topic, and so perhaps we can discuss now how FSSC 22000 compares in terms of a FSMA alignment with being audit ready all the time. We all know that FDA isn't going to make an appointment with you to come and look at your record.
Right.
So give us some insight here.
Right. So this is one of our favorite topics. And, again, we're going to bounce down to the bottom of the slide and we'll talk about unannounced audits. So again, with FSSC 22000, it's a management scheme. It's a certification of a management system, which means that you're not going in at any one time to sort of see one particular process or one particular product. The management system is an installation of processes that should be ongoing, and it's not just the condition of only one day. So we want to install a management system that allows constant monitoring, constant reevaluation, constant assessment, and it's an ongoing process of keeping food safe. So it's an establishment of a system to make food safe. It's not an establishment of a process to meet an audit. So the audit really is irrelevant. The process and the manufacturing systems and the management of that manufacturing systems are the things that are important. So once the management process is installed, it shouldn't really matter when you are audited, except with management system such as FSSC 22000, you really want to talk about that. You really want to see the managers that are involved in the management system. So that's one issue that we do have with one of the unannounced audits. But the system should be ongoing. So with FSSC, we have a 3-year certification system. That doesn't mean that we abandon our facilities in between those 3 years. We have an annual ongoing surveillance audit, which is required by GFSI, and that's really to go in and to see, to make sure that the PRPs are effective, to make sure the monitoring is effective, to make sure that the training records are up to date. So the management system should be ongoing, and it should be self-fulfilling, and it's a requirement to reevaluate it, to improve it, and it's an ongoing process. So the surveillance audits are just monitoring that. It's our means of governance. The FSSC integrity program monitors the standards to make sure everybody is meeting the same standards. But within the management system, then the company is required to do internal audits. So the manufacturers are responsible for meeting their own requirements and doing their own internal audits. So it really shouldn't matter, when an audit is done. You are effectively audit ready all the time. And within this, your requirement, you are required to do the verification, the validation, and the record keeping, and the monitoring. And it's the documentation that is going to be very important to FSMA, and I think that that's been mentioned a number of times, and that could be burdensome for some that are not used to doing, so much monitoring and documentation. If you're FSSC certified, you are used to doing that documentation and monitoring and having those documents available for an audit in the same way as you'll need it to be available should the FDA want to evaluate your management system. And the question of unannounced audits always comes out. So effectively, if you're certified and you have an ongoing effective management system, an unannounced audit shouldn't really make any difference. You should have that information available to you at any time. And FSSC is sort of late to undertake the unannounced audit by virtue of the fact that we do require to talk to the management. They do need to be there. That we are going to undertake a pilot to evaluate, the optimization, how we can incorporate unannounced audits into our 3-year certification cycle. And that's really just to enhance confidence in the certification system, and it's for everybody's benefit. And we will collect data on showing that the certification of a management system is effective. So it is an ongoing process. The management system is ongoing, and our governance of the system is ongoing too. In the same way, we'd like to evaluate unannounced audits.
Great, thank you. You and I, when we were preparing for this webinar, you speak very passionately about food safety culture and its place, not just with FSSC, but with the overall goals of FSMA. Perhaps we can talk about that alignment a little bit for our audience.
Right. So again, this is kind of being brought in with the FSSC 22000, ISO 22000 approach. An ISO 22000 framework requires proof of management commitment to the food safety process, and it requires accountability. It requires the resources to be available, or management to make resources available to see the food safety process through. You can't get halfway through establishing a management system and find you don't have the resources to either have the personnel or the infrastructure to actually ensure that it's effective. So first of all, we require management commitments, and I think that it's been agreed that culture is going to come from the top, and that the personnel, the working personnel, have to see that management is committed, and the culture, as you say, is going to come from that commitment. Inherent to the 22000 approach is also constant communication. We've talked about the need for communication up and down the supply chain to make sure that products, supplies, raw materials coming in meet the standard, and as does the products going out, that they're going to meet customer requirements. We're going to have information back from customers to make sure that we're meeting all those requirements. We have to maintain communication internally too. So all the different functions within the process need to be in communication. You need to know if your raw material supplier has changed. You need to know if you've changed a piece of equipment. You need to know if a time is out or a harvest is changed. So this communication is important. We have to have this communication system in there. Within that communication becomes an employer involvement. So it's increasing involvement. The circles of involvement expand from management. So in order to maintain this communication, you're involving everybody. If you're involving everybody, you have to make sure that they know what they're doing. The personnel have to be trained. They have to know the importance of their role. Maybe the lowest of the low, maybe or considered. Everybody is involved in the safe food, and the person. It doesn't matter whether the person paying the bills or person sweeping the floor. Their function is inherent in producing safe food, and they all need to know that they are valued, they are important, and they need to know how their function contributes to the production of safe food. And that's the basis of developing a food safety culture. Your involvement, knowing why you do it, the importance of why you do it, and the importance of your own role. So that's where the culture comes from. So it's the stemming from the top, stemming from the management commitment, the accountability of management, but also the accountability of the person on the shop floor, so the person putting the product in the packet that leaves the factory. So all of these are very important. They're all involved. They're all in communication with everybody, and it facilitates that culture and the feedback and continuous communication feedback into continuous improvement, because if a problem is identified, then that comes back into the continuous improvement, which is another element that is inherent in FSMA. So it's all the processes, it all fits together, it all integrates, it's all important, and it all ends up in the production of safe food.
Very well said. Very well said. Let's move out of alignment in terms of specific topics now and speak about some of the changes that have already been made or perhaps are being planned at FSSC 22000 to perhaps better align with FSMA.
Right. So we, as I said, we are, we're quite enthusiastic about how FSMA, how the FDA has been insightful and put FSMA together. And we do see much alignment, as I said, with the food safety plan, with the preventive controls, with the hazard analysis. But we do think that there will be some gaps. We hope there will be some gaps because we would like to show our commitment to the FDA to fill those gaps. We do know that there is going to be a requirement to include food fraud into the hazard analysis, and I know this has been discussed at length, and it will be probably also required in the revision of the GFSI benchmarking document. So all GFSI benchmark schemes will be looking at including food fraud into the hazard assessment. So it will need to be included. So that will be one change that will probably be added. There was also talk of the need for consideration of radiological contamination in the hazard analysis. I think that's now being included into the consideration of a chemical contaminant. And again, it's going to be verified and assessed for its requirements. If you're importing from an area that might have suspected radiological contamination, it's something that you should think of. If it's something that you're, that you're growing within your own environment, you may not need to consider that to the same extent. So again, there will be, need to consider different areas. Some of that is already inherent in the flexible approach of, the 22000 framework, but I think that there will be gaps that we will identify. And of course, we have, it's not something that we will rely on ourselves. We are going to we have commissioned a gap analysis, for a thorough analysis of the preventive controls, both for human and animal food against FSSC 22000. so that a third party of experts, actually, of course, David Ashton and his group at TAG will be doing this for us, and we will be able to compare the two approaches, and he will identify those gaps. And then we will obviously inform everybody so that we can move forward and discuss how we will align together, working together to meet the requirements of FSMA, and also to inform the FDA to illustrate how we can form and to identify those gaps that we have identified.
Thank you. Now, FSMA is not the end-all. It's been a tremendous effort, but can you tell us perhaps about some areas there might be some gaps in FSMA when it comes to comprehensive food safety that are filled by FSSC?
So I think as I say, we probably have the expertise or the upper hand in experience with food safety management. We have been monitoring and verifying and documented preventative controls through our prerequisite programs and operational prerequisite programs. So, there's a certain extent we're more stringent in documenting and controlling these preventive controls that FSMA is not requiring. So we will be going into greater depth in there. We've already required education and training. FSMA now makes this a legal obligation. Again, this is within our development of food safety culture that I've mentioned, and the communication, education and involvement is an inherent part of FSSC 22000. Traceability is also something that has been and will be continue to be important, and so both backwards, both upstream and downstream, through the supply verification, traceability of products, raw materials, and upstream, so that if there is an issue that is arisen, that the product can be easily recalled. So everything has to be traceable, documented, both from its origins and its ultimate destination. So all of the things that FSMA really is identifying, or within the preventative controls, are very well established within FSSC 22000. Sometimes, often, to more detail. And the documentation, as I said, I think there may be some differences that become apparent in our analysis with the specification of the documentation and the form of the documentation that will be usable by the FDA. But certainly, we're FSSC certified companies are well used to having heavy documentation in order to sort of meet the requirements of FSSC. So I think, the whole bundle, the food safety management approach of sort of FSSC 22000 with the governance, fits well into FSMA preparation. And the governance actually is something else that we haven't mentioned. All of the schemes and scheme owners, are very conscientious about monitoring the certification process that sort of they oversee through an accredited process. With certification bodies. So, and that's all part of our own quality control of our certification, for the FDA to undergo sort of a governance on all the facilities that are now within jurisdiction of the regulation is going to be huge. So I think that FSSC 20000 and the other schemes are still going to have an important role in maintaining this standard and sort of generating data on how these standards are maintained. So I'm not sure that the FDA, sort of realizes we've got gigantic, what a huge task that is. So, but again, that's an experience that all the GFSI scheme owners have.
Great, thanks. So let's move to that, those looming deadlines of being FSMA compliant. For companies who are either already certified or planning to become certified in FSSC 22000, what are some of the things that they should be doing today to make sure that they are compliant on day one?
Well, I think, I think they're probably doing what they're doing right now. They're joining webinars, listening to different talking heads all over the place, and, everybody has their views of how they should be doing it, sort of reading. So the fact that there are so many webinars and there is so much interest is tantamount to the responsibilities that, the food industry really feels. So, they're already doing a lot of it. From our part, we will continue working with our customers. We're doing our own due diligence, if you like, of comparing our approach to that of FSMA, and we will notify all of our clients of any gaps that we've been identified. And it's an ongoing process. I can't confess that I've read all 600 pages of all the regulations, and it's something that we're doing as a team. So once we have identified those gaps, I think we will all be sharing those, and we will be working to meet it together. And then once we've aligned ourselves on, paper, we will be working with the FDA, because I think you play a large role in helping everybody meet the requirements. So it's a two-way thing. And then once, as I said, once we've sort of aligned on paper, I think that it would be appropriate to sort of compare in practice. And, we would like to see some pilots of some side-by-side audits of an FSSC 22000 audit compared to an FDA inspection, and to sort of share information and experience on what the two approaches identify. And that will possibly identify more gaps. It may identify things that are done unnecessarily. Nobody wants to do anything twice. But I think that will be sort of the next stage to sort of do some comparisons in practice. Really sort of work together. And, as I said here, the aim of everybody, up and down the supply chain is really to work together, to produce safe food and, to meet the regulatory requirements. And, I think that it's an ongoing thing.
Let me pose one more question to you before we open it up for questions from the audience. And, when it comes to managing a robust GFSI program and when it comes to managing FSMA, there's been a lot of talk about the role of automation technologies. You and I have discussed this in the past. What do you see as the role of technology for everybody to be able to manage these programs moving forward?
Well, obviously, I think it's huge. I haven't counted the number of times that I've sort of mentioned in the last 45 minutes, the role of documentation and the importance of documentation. And, it's all the adages, say what you do what you say. If it's not documented, you haven't done it. Verification of suppliers, you need documentation to prove that they're doing what they're doing. You need to provide documented proof of monitoring. You need documented proof of corrective actions. You need documented proof of everything. So, the record keeping and the documentation is extremely important. And I think that the FDA knows that, for FSMA, there is going to be, it's burdensome, right, from the beginning, that we knew that there was going to be burdensome documentation. And I think it's going to be beyond, spreadsheets and notebooks for any manufacturer, really, both from keeping it and keeping track and having it accessible for an unannounced audit, an FDA inspection, or just for a regular certification audit that that you're expecting. So I think it's extremely important. I think also it's important, at least within the ISO 22000 framework, the monitoring and verification of the operational prerequisite programs is also very, very important. And these sometimes are difficult to monitor. They're not necessarily critical control points, but they are intangible elements sometimes that are important to be controlled. And I think sort of electronic documentation and monitoring is going to become more and more important. for something simple, for instance, like washing hands or keeping track of equipment, and that's going to have to probably take a form of some sort of electronic tracking and monitoring. So I think there's going to be areas that we haven't actually thought about yet, which are going to become more important. So again, already for the documentation, proof of monitoring, actually doing the monitoring, tracking changes to specifications is going to be important, changes in identification of critical control points, changing of reevaluation of a management system which has to be done at regular intervals, and again, supply chain controls I've mentioned, and the corrective action. So I really think it's going to be very important, and I think it's going to make life a lot easier. As I'm sitting myself here, I've got 3 screens here. I couldn't keep track of half of things if I didn't. I have trouble doing it even with 3 screens. So I think it's going to be essential. I don't see how that we have a future doing food safety monitoring in the way that we're doing without it.
Thank you for that insight. So what we're going to do now is go to our next part of our webinar. All of you should be able to see that. I've taken us out of full screen now, and you should be able to see the Q&A tab on the lower tab on the lower right-hand side of your screen. I'm going to spend the next few minutes giving you some additional information from the sponsors today, and then we'll open it up for questions from Jacqueline, and then hopefully everybody can stay for the SafetyChain demonstration. To submit a question, simply enter it in the box on the lower right-hand side and hit send. And while those are queuing up, I'll give some additional information. For FSSC 22000, you can see the website address there, which is fssc22000.com. Some great upcoming events, the GFSI conference, where FSSC 22000 will have a great presence. That's March 1st through 3rd in Berlin. There's also many regional events that will be listed on the website. FSSC is represented at most major meetings. You can also follow them on Twitter at FSSC22000, as well as on LinkedIn. Again, we'd love to thank Food Safety Tech for their sponsorship. We hope all of you are signed up for and members of Food Safety Tech, and you can learn more at foodsafetytech.com. One of the things that we hope that you visit are their tremendous resource centers on many, many important topics in the world of food safety. SafetyChain sponsors the Supply Chain Food Safety and Quality Automation Resource Center. You can see the URL there. Also, when you're on the home page, there's a tab of resource buttons. We're the first one. There's white papers, archives, articles, lots of informative information on that topic there. We hope you visit that. SafetyChain is fast becoming one of the most popular automation tools in the food safety community for helping companies automate a robust GFSI program and to get companies ready for FSMA with features such as approved vendor and supplier compliance program management and really comprehensive supply chain controls, the ability to manage, monitor, and verify food safety plans, including HACCP and HARPC plans, the ability to have all records and documents time and date stamped and uploaded to a central repository for reporting, to be audit ready on demand, and for continuous improvement, and the ability to tie those records to your FSMA food safety plan or GFSI code for on-demand audits, as I just said, to be able to track on how you're doing in various components of your plan. You can see that you can contact us for more information at info@safetychain.com. And again, as soon as we're finished with questions for Jacqueline, we hope you can stay on for our high-level demonstration. So with that, let's look and see some of the questions that we have lined up here. And the first question that we see, Jacqueline, is from Sandy, who's saying, if we're starting the process now of getting ready for FSSC certification, what are some of the first things that we should be doing?
Well, obviously you want to do you want to look at the standards, and you need to do gap analysis on what you are doing already, and go to the FSSC 22,000 website. We have the FSSC requirements that are all available, and we refer back to the publicly available ISO standards. And these are all publicly available. We don't write the standards. They are sort of, written by consensus, and they're sort of international standards that everybody recognizes. So, you should take a look at these. You should start with sort of the ISO 22000 to look at that framework, and then depending on what your function is, you would select the prerequisite program that is appropriate to your scope. And that defines sort of the best practices or the good manufacturing practices for maintaining a safe environment, whether it's your premises, cleaning, or sanitation processes, and all depending on your particular function or manufacturer. So take a look at those, and then see how you compare, see where you fall short. Talk to a certification body. We have a list of certification bodies on our website too. We also have a list of all the certified companies, so you could talk to companies that are certified, sort of identify the issues, the things that they found more difficult. And of course, you can talk to us. We're always sort of open to sort of discuss interest either through info@FSSC22000 or to me, jsully@FSSC22000.com.
Okay, great, thank you. Manveen is asking, what is required for operational PRPs for FSSC 22000? Is it hazard analysis, monitoring, verification, and corrective action, or is there more?
So it's all of those. So within the HACCP plan, then operational PRPs are the hazards or the risks that aren't actually defined either by a biological, chemical, or physical contaminant. It's an operational issue. It could be personnel handling a material to make sure that they're washing their hands at certain intervals. It could be looking at water coming in, making sure that that water is monitored, and making sure that it's tested, making sure that it's clean. So it's all of those. It's identifying additional hazards and risks that aren't identified in the HACCP program. And they will be fairly obvious to you, but they have to be also monitored, and you have to make sure that they don't go out of spec. Many of the recent high-profile outbreaks of food safety issues, an example may be sort of listeria contamination, have actually been due to a lack of operational PRPs, whether it's inadequate cleaning, whether it's not monitoring the cleaning process, it's not monitoring the water that's cleaning a product. So it's the things that just are outside that are relevant to your product that you should be controlling. And you will know what they are. I mean, we're not coming in and we're going to tell you, oh, you should be looking at this or you should be checking the water. Within your own premises, you will need to evaluate your process, and you will, we can work with you because you know how your process is, and it's a two-way thing. And that's where the flexibility comes in. It's not a prescriptive approach. It's a flexibility that's the best practice for your particular function. So in answer to your question, it's all of those. But it's not as daunting as you think, because they are, they're usually, fairly obvious and will be well known to you, but they just need to be monitored. And that will help you, keep track, and you can see if something goes off spec. And it all helps meet those end products of safe food.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a couple of more questions. Jay is saying you mentioned two potential gaps. One was radiological. What was the other? Was it food fraud?
Yeah, it was. It was food fraud that sort of almost becomes within that hazard analysis, so it could be a prerequisite program. But yes, it's food fraud that's not actually identified right now in the GFSI certification schemes, it's likely to be a requirement of the next benchmarking document. So the next round and revision of the schemes, they'll be reviewed. Food fraud will be included in that.
Sally is asking, you mentioned that FSSC will notify companies of gaps. Do you have any idea of when that notification or the gap analysis might be made available?
Yeah, we're hoping that it'll be available in January. So, you'll know. It'll make a lot of noise. So, no, we're hoping that the analysis will be completed in January. And, if not before, it will probably be, available by the sort of time of the GFSI meeting next March. And, there'll be lots of other comparisons. I think that will be a good sort of watershed for a lot of analysis of FSMA and, what it's really going to mean to everybody. But we will certainly be notifying everybody of that through the website and other means. But hopefully January, at least February at the latest.
Great. And we'll take one more, and this is from Vanessa. Vanessa's asking about clarification on updating HACCP to comply with HARPC, and you spoke a lot about it. It's really about going beyond CCPs to risk assessment and preventive controls, right? Yes,
it is, and it's not necessarily updating HACCP. It's just adding to it, and and that I think is the reason that the FDA is actually using the term HARPC. They're sort of separating themselves from HACCP. They have HACCP systems for seafood, juice, and low acid canning materials. So it's a separation from that. But obviously, the hazard analysis is, is essential at the beginning, and the prerequisite programs or the preventive controls fill that out to encompass a more complete preventive measures. So it's adding to it rather than it's adding to it to update it.
Great, thank you. With that, thank you very, very much, Jacqueline. This is really very informative and insightful. If you have additional questions that you'd like to address to Dr. Southey, her email address is right there on the screen, jsoutee@FSSC22000. And we'd like to thank everybody, and again, Food Safety Tech, and we hope now that that you can stay on with us for our optional demonstration of SafetyChain. What we're going to do now is show you how SafetyChain for food can help you be FSMA ready and manage a robust GFSI program. These capabilities are part of our industry-leading food safety chain management solution called SafetyChain for Food. It's an integrated platform for food safety and quality assurance at all points along your supply chain, for what's coming in, for what you're doing with it, and for what you're sending into commerce, or upstream, downstream, and internally. It has modules for supplier compliance, for food safety management, for food quality management, and regulatory and GFSI compliance and audit readiness. And all of these contain once and done point of origin data collection through SafetyChain mobile apps, which operate across the entire platform. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce our Director of Technical Solutions, Eric Hansen, who's going to show you our demo, and then we'll stay on for a few minutes. For those of you that might have some questions for Eric, we'll come back out of full screen and take a couple of questions. So, Eric, I believe that you have the ball now, and we should be able to. You should be able to click and go ahead. So, welcome.
I got it.
There you go.
You got it. Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Southey. That was a really informative presentation. As we introduce what we're going to be stepping through here, As Barbara showed you, SafetyChain is a comprehensive platform for food safety management. We help you ensure that your vendors are qualified and help you maintain that qualification. We support your food safety and your food quality programs as you are processing the material that goes through your facilities. And then we help you ensure that you are meeting all of the regulatory and non-regulatory requirements that you're subject to, including GFSI, and that will be the focus of our presentation today, specifically FSSC compliance. So stepping through this, we will begin with the vendor approval programs, how we can help you manage those programs and ensure that you are supporting FSMA qualified supply chain controls, including foreign supplier verification program. We're going to show you how we can support your food safety programs with the automation, and as Barbara was saying, Barbara and Dr. Southey both emphasize the importance of once and done data capture. We'll take a look at how we support that. We will show how once this data is captured once and done, it is available for you in our centralized database of FSQA data and documentation and ready for you to pull out and review and verify in many different contexts. Your own supervisor review, your presentation to an auditor, so that you can be confident and certain that you are meeting all of your requirements and executing according to your plans. That all arrives at a point of on-demand audit readiness, and that's where we'll wrap up. So I will show first, we'll get into our vendor approval program management. So what we're looking at here is a supplier table. SafetyChain will help you manage all of your suppliers. We will, for each supplier, we will capture contact information. We'll capture what products you are receiving from those suppliers, and we help you manage and maintain your requirements for documentations and certifications. What we're looking at here is the top-level table. You can see that we support supplier hierarchies, so you can track compliance and performance at both the local and the corporate level. And we indicate at this top level who's approved, who's not approved, and who's active and who's not active. As we get onto this next screen, you will see how we help you support that approval and certification. So what we're looking at here is a set of requirements that we're imposing on new suppliers. This is specifically for new suppliers of leafy greens. So these requirements can be category or product based. Obviously, you're going to require different things from packaging suppliers versus raw product providers versus international providers. In this case, we want our supplier to download and complete a supplier survey, or they can complete it via a web questionnaire. We support both via our framework. And then we're going to collect from them a pretty classic and standard set of documentation. We want third-party audits, we want FDA registration, we want to see their HACCP plan, etc. This becomes a set of requirements that we push out to the supplier via a portal. Now we're looking at the portal, the supplier side portal. So this is where our supplier contacts can interact with our requirement set and complete the questionnaire we want them to complete and provide the documentation that we want to provide. As they interact with this, we can track their progress, see which suppliers are responding and which are not. We can review what they have provided and approve or reject with comments, and we can actually have a dialogue over suppliers. If we're having a difficulty getting the right kind of document from them in the right format, we can track that. It's all material you can return to and review when it comes time to renegotiate as applicable. Pardon me, let me advance here. Now we're looking back inside the record of an individual supplier. So if we had pushed out imagine we had pushed out our leafy greens supplier onboarding requirements to our supplier, Al's Organics, a fictional supplier. I apologize if anybody out there really is named Al's Organic. And we're tracking the status now of what they have provided. They are, we can imagine they are an approved supplier or had been. We can see there's an issue now. But each line item we see here is a document or a certification that we have acquired from them. You can access the document themselves via the link or via the details link. You can see document history. If we have received over a period of many quarters or even many years, we can see each iteration of the document that we have received from them. If you're an approved user, you can lock that down so other operational users will only see the current document. And we're tracking for each of these documents expiration dates. That's where we see the different highlighted colors here. So red is indicating that that is an expired document. That status will trigger a notification so everybody knows we have something that needs to be addressed, and we don't have to crawl through our suppliers one by one and make sure that all of our dates are current. We will send notifications, and we have reports that show this information. And the yellow highlight you see there is showing a document or a certification that expires within 30 days. Taking this to the next level, for our suppliers, we are managing the documentation and certifications that we require of them, so we'll always know if they're compliant to those criteria. We also support the auditing of suppliers by your staff with our mobile devices and our mobile application. We will spend some more time on this as we go through the briefing, but this is a quick example of a facility exterior audit you may take to your supplier when you're auditing their facilities, their plant and material. These audits are entirely configurable to your needs, although we're happy to provide suggestions. This is just another way you can make sure that your suppliers are meeting the standards of your operation and the regulatory, non-regulatory environment that you are dealing in. When we complete those audits, as those audits are being completed, one of the chief values is they trigger real-time notifications. So if you are on site at a supplier and you notice a critical issue, a notification can be generated to key stakeholders so they can immediately know that there is an issue. These notifications will highlight exactly what the issue is and indicate if a corrective action process is underway. And that is what we see here. Any user that can authenticate into the system can also follow the link to look at the detail of the record, and that's where we will go next. So now if we have followed that link in the email, we're looking now in the SafetyChain system at the detail of that audit record. We can see here on the left, these are the elements that the inspector was directed to look at, or auditor. Here on the right, these are the elements, these are the findings. Green findings are compliant, a red finding is non-compliant. You can capture using the mobile device that you're using to complete the form. You can capture photos, and those photos become associated with the record forevermore, so you can communicate to internal stakeholders direct visual evidence via photographs, and those are always there for your use. And you can say, in this case, we have an unresolved corrective action. This will remain in the face of the key supervisors via a dashboard and via various sign-off screens until it is resolved, so nobody can ignore the fact that we have an unresolved corrective action there. So that's how we help. Those are some tools we offer to help you manage your vendors through approval programs, supply chain controls, and helping you audit their facilities and their programs to ensure that your vendors are all meeting the requirements of your standards. On to the next section, we're going to look at food safety program automation, particularly as it relates to HACCP and HARPC management, monitoring, and verification. We'll take a look at a task scheduler, and once you have a scheduled task, you know you have something that needs to be completed so you can monitor the status. I'll show how we can help your operators evaluate status in real time and react in the most appropriate ways and in a manner that keeps the supervisor and other stakeholders apprised of the activity. And we'll show how we can trigger non-conformance alerts and show a little bit more about corrective action generation and documentation and record sign-offs. oops, going to the next page. There we go, to the next page. This is a interface we use where you can define the automation for any given program. We can see here that under our HACCP program, when we are bagging ready-to-eat vegetable and salad blends, high-risk product, we have two CCPs that must be done on a defined schedule, and this would come directly from a HACCP plan. I'll show you where that HACCP plan can be stored and reviewed. In this case, we have a check of the sanitation level of the recirculated wash water that must be done every 60 minutes, and a metal detector check. We must check every 30 minutes to make sure that the metal detectors are functioning as required. Let's see how that translates into operational work. So as we launch that HACCP job, it will begin to create and assign those tasks to the operating group responsible for executing those tasks at that schedule. So every 60 minutes, a sanitation, a sanity check of the recirculated wash water will be assigned to my in-process inspection group. It comes through on the mobile device as a task that they must execute. They will open it up, and it will walk them through exactly how to conduct the check. We can include on these forms language directly from the HACCP plan or the SOP as required. They capture exactly what the product is they're looking at, and they capture the results of their checks. In this case, 80 is non-compliant. We're hiding here the big red X that shows you it's non-compliant. But what you do see is it has forced a corrective action. The operator must now begin a corrective action process because we're out of compliance on a CCP, and we can present to the operator the list of acceptable next steps. This, of course, will trigger notifications to supervisors, etc. We can see below that the pH portion of this check is compliant. We show the limits here. The blue check indicates that we are compliant. Okay, another check here is a sanitary check, a pre-operational sanitary check. This is a great example of once we've done data capture. If we have a supervisor that is walking the floor pre-operation to make sure that everything is to our sanitation standard, we can now capture this activity. The supervisor simply completes the form, and this particular form doesn't convey in the PowerPoint, but this particular form expands to capture additional information conditionally. So what we're seeing here is where we have identified a situation where the sanitation condition is deficient to our standard. We're not to standard. If it was to standard, you would simply say that you verified it was to standard and submit. Now we capture the operator who did the check, the date and time that it was done, and we now have an electronic record once and done that we can refer back to. If the auditor comes 3 weeks from now and says, I want to see that pre-operational sanitation check that was done 3 weeks ago, we can very easily pull that record up from our reporting interface and show it to them. But in this case, we've discovered a deficient sanitary condition, so we walk the operator through capturing the additional required information. What was the type of deficiency, additional description, and any corrective action that is required. Again, a look at the notifications that are sent in this case. We can see that we had the non-compliant result on the CCP, the sanity check. That forced us to stop the line. Obviously, we now have everybody's attention. We have an unresolved corrective action that needs to be addressed before we can get on with production. And all of the activity where that corrective action is addressed and resolved will be captured so that it can be presented to management, auditors, and other stakeholders. Here is the detail record. Again, you can get here simply by clicking the link that is in that email notification. We can see what the result was that triggered the non-compliance, and we can see again the corrective action status. The supervisor can come in and edit the corrective action and update it with the new status. If we stopped the line, we adjusted the pump, we're now back in the compliant range. The editor can open this up, note all of that information, and it becomes part of the auditable record. And we can move on with our production. So those are some examples of how we help you automate with once-and-done data capture your HACCP and HARPC programs. Now let's take a look at some of the value of having this centralized database of FSQA data and documents. So what we're looking at here is a homepage dashboard, and this reflects the flow of products through our operation. If we look at the left, you can see that we're capturing information on our supplier compliance. Below that, we're capturing the status, the compliance percentage by supplier, and that can be ranked or sorted in various ways. In the center, we're tracking our own internal FSQA activity at a very detailed transactional level. I can see here in my corrective action summary that I have 5 unresolved corrective actions. I can click through and see exactly what they are, along with all of the activity that surrounded that. I have directly below it, in fact, detail on those 5 unresolved corrective actions, and I can click through them to see what those are. And this is what I meant by these unresolved corrective actions remain in the supervisor's space until they're resolved. It's right here on my home page dashboard. Once this is resolved, it'll drop out of this list. It'll be available for other reporting and other views, but it will no longer be in the unresolved corrective action list. On the right, we're tracking our own internal performance, and these are just some simple examples. How are we complying to the requirements of our complaint program, the requirements of our HACCP program, the compliance of our operational criteria, and below that, some additional detail. So this is the type of real-time information that is available as we capture information on these materials that flow through our system. We also enable reporting. This is a simple but very, in my opinion, important and effective type of report. We refer to it as a results report. We're simply, in this case, querying by a simple interface. We're saying, show me all of the result activity under my HACCP program for a specific date range. I can see that we are conducting CCP calibrations. You can see, are they conducted, say, for example, we have a PRP that requires us to verify via calibration the functioning of our CCP thermometers once a week. I can run this report to make sure that that was done. A simple modification to the report will pull back results on other CCPs or other product specific. The idea here is we have a very simple interface to get at very specific data for whatever purpose you're looking at very quickly. Okay. All of this really rolls up to a state of on-demand audit readiness. That's one of the end goals of this system. So let's take a look at what that means. We have all data and records and documents, time and date stamped in the system, so everybody knows the status and how and when things occurred. We have the ability to tie data and records directly to GFSI code and other types of requirements, and this helps you have a single interface so that you know you are prepared for an audit. Where is my required documentation? Where is my data that verifies we are executing to what we said we would do? And the combination of this allows us to be audit ready all the time. Let's take a look at exactly what we're looking at here. And this is specifically, we're now looking at the FSSC 22000 code. We actually store the entire code, FSSC 22000 code in our system. We allow you to navigate through the code to clause level detail. What we're looking at here is clause 7.6, establishment of the HACCP plan and monitoring procedures. I can store now, link at this clause level any required documentation. So we can see that we have linked the HACCP plan. It's highlighted red, so I know that it is expired. I need to get that plan updated. But you can open up the plan and review the contents of the plan from this interface. Present it to an auditor if they want to see your HACCP-related documentation. We can take it to the next step. So here we have, in a single screen, a statement of what the requirements are, and we have our statement of what our organization is going to do to meet that requirement. Then we take that to the next level, and we allow you on the same screen. These are little collapsible widgets. So our document is now collapsed under this widget. We've expanded the related reports widget. We allow you to define reports that will pull back data that will verify that you are executing according to the requirements of this clause. So single screen states the requirement, allows you to store what your organization is doing to meet the requirement, and then allows you to retrieve data that shows you that you are doing the required activity or doing the activity that you said you were going to do according to your plan to meet or exceed that requirement. And you can see these reports pull back time and date stamped information. These are each row here is a record of a single CCP check, along with results, corrective action, time and date, and user stamp. So this screen becomes really the center of your audit readiness. What is the requirement? Where is my documentation that shows that we have reviewed it as an organization and developed a plan that states what our requirements are, and then pull back the reports to show the data that we are executing as we said we would execute to meet those requirements. So as we look at the FSMA GFSI compliance and audit readiness, we reviewed the vendor approval programs, how we help you manage your vendors and supplier compliance to make sure that you are supporting FSMA or GFSI or any regulatory requirements around supplier management. We reviewed how we can help you automate and manage your HACCP and HARPC programs with once and done data capture via task assignment, so you can see what tasks are done, what tasks are undone, and you can control who executes activity and when. And we showed how we capture all this information in a centralized database of FS2A data and documents that can be rolled up into a context where that is prepared for you to ensure you're always audit ready, to the extent that you can actually use that interface, use that context to present organized information to an auditor. So just the final review of the scope of the SafetyChain product. It maps exactly what we showed. So we support supplier compliance. We help you manage your food safety and your food quality management programs. We didn't emphasize quality much today. We were focused mostly on safety. But we do have very rich functionality, leveraging the same framework to support your food quality programs. Now, we roll it all up in the end to ensure that you are meeting the requirements of your regulatory and non-regulatory environment, and in fact are always ready for an audit against any of these standards of that environment. So, Barbara, I think we'll turn it over to you and to the audience now for any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. I'm going to go out of full screen again here. And same as last time, if you have any questions, you can put them in the lower right-hand side and hit send, and we will we'll queue up a few questions for Eric. Eric, I see one already, and this is from Jonathan. Jonathan is asking if this solution integrates with other systems that are part of a company's food safety enterprise, specifically an ERP system.
Yeah, we can interface, integrate with ERP systems. We can synchronize what we refer to as master data with the ERP systems to make sure that our product, customer, supplier tables are always in sync with the master data in your ERPs. And we can even support kind of production operations. If we get a message from your ERP, we can launch the FSQA, the suite of FSQA activity required to support production of a particular batch of product.
Mm-hmm. Great. And a question from Jim asking, do all of the modules need to be implemented together, or is the solution available by module? And I think he is referring back to the product diagram.
Yeah, that's a good question. The solution is available by module. If what you're interested in is supplier compliance, you can purchase only the supplier compliance piece.
Great, thank you. And I think that those are all of the questions that we have time for today. You can see our contact information. You can request a private demo, more information on the solution. One of the things that our customers do find at SafetyChain is that they are usually managed to achieve hard dollar ROI within just months of implementation. We've got a pretty nifty ROI calculator that we can take you and your team through using your numbers and your scenarios, and you can use that info at SafetyChain as well to request that. So with that, we'd like to just thank everybody again. This has just been a fabulous series, more than 2,000 participants, and it's been very exciting to have everybody join us. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day and a great weekend.
Thank you very much.